But yeah, so welcome back to Three Things. I'm John Hartness. I'm the founder and publisher of Falstaff Books. And joining me this time to talk about three things you're fucking up when you're writing comedy is Paul Barrett, author of A Pile of Stuff and creator of fun t-shirts.
Yeah. Oh, well, at least one right now.
Yeah,
we have others coming.
There you go. So Paul, tell the folks what you've written and what they're doing wrong when they're trying to be funny.
Well, as far as comedy, I've written two books. I've written the Maltese...
Two books?
Two books. The Malaise Falcon, which is a takeoff of the Maltese Falcon. It's J.R.R. Tolkien meets Elmore Leonard, about a dwarf detective. And Scribe of Destiny, which is about fantasy's most reluctant hero. It's a guy who does not want to go on the mission he's sent on. So,
it's almost like a chosen one trope, except no one would ever choose this schmuck.
Exactly. And he didn't want to be chosen.
Right.
So the three things you're doing wrong with comedy, to my mind, anyway, are the biggest one I see when I read comedy is over-explaining the joke. You put the punchline out there, and then you go on and explain what the punchline means, the characters' reactions to it, and why they're reacting that way. A prime example I can use is in the new one we're working on, and I'm guilty of this because I did it, is basically it says... I can't even remember now, but it's like it said, and then he was a hobbit. Well, he was a hobbit because blah, 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 and then went on to explain why you should think that particular sentence was funny. So
yeah, that sucks. Don't do that.
Yeah, spit the joke out there and let it go. The thing about humor is it's very subjective. Not everybody is going to like 100% of what you do or even get 100% of what you do in the joke. And sometimes that's a failure on the writing, but a lot of times it's a failure on just that person doesn't catch that frame of reference. So don't feel like every joke has to land for everyone, because it's never going to happen. Second thing is joke in sacrifice of story or character. And what I mean by that is you have a joke and you have this funny situation that you want to get out there. You want the guy dangling off the cliff with whipped cream hanging off his privates for whatever reason. But
I mean, that's just Saturday night.
Well, okay, fair, that's true. Well, I didn't mention Chris Coyle though, so.
Okay, yeah, okay.
But there's no reason that the character that's your story would be in this situation or would have it happen, but you've decided you want this joke, so you put it in there regardless of whether it makes sense for the character or the situation. So just be aware of that, and if there is a joke you really want to have in there that you think is the best thing ever, make sure you have a character that it would really happen to or a situation in which it would really happen, instead of trying to, well, square peg, round hole. Don't try and shoehorn a joke in just for the sake of the joke.
And it's important to remember that you may think this is the funniest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
Although sliced bread isn't really funny. But anyway, you might think this joke's hilarious.
You've never had the sliced bread I've had. But anyway.
You're right. Because that would be gross.
Yeah, fair enough.
But you may not think it's that funny tomorrow.
Yeah.
Your reader may not think it's that funny, but also this isn't the last book you're going to write.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So if you have a joke that you like, save it for the next one.
Right. It may fit better in the next book. There were jokes I cut from Identity Theft because just didn't work for this. Now, I legit have a mechanical bull named Hornicus Prime in this book. So obviously I'm not averse to shoehorning a stupid name or a joke into this book, but not all of them fit.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I think sometimes, too, if you're aware of it, you can make it work. In Malaise Falcon, there's an organization called Goblin, which is the Goblin Organization for the Better Life and Ethical Treatment. And Spade is like, boy, they really worked to get that one as an acronym, didn't they? So if you're aware that the joke is funny but needs some explanation, you can get away with it as long as the characters don't quite.
Didn't they do that in Avengers
either
with S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah, I think they did.
Sounds like somebody really wanted to say S.H.I.E.L.D.
I think Falcon was first, though. Actually,
probably.
Yeah, I believe it. And let's face it, nothing is totally new. I mean,
oh no,
I hear repeated jokes all the time in shows, so it just happens. Third thing. What did I say? The third thing was.
I don't know, dude. You're the comedy expert. I just write books.
Fair enough. Wow.
I think the third thing was actually mine because it was being too timely or
That's
too
right.
tied to pop culture.
Yes, pop culture
As
jokes.
we're sitting here in an Apocalypse Meow t-shirt,
But that's a classic.
and I'm sitting here wearing a Darth Vader shirt saying, "This is my happy face."
True. But yes, pop culture references, well, especially I think in fantasy, science fiction, maybe you can get away with it a little more, but fantasy's a little tougher because obviously they don't know about Earth, they don't know about our world. So why there would be a what's up joke, which
Even in urban fantasy, which is often set in our world
Yeah.
but off axis a little bit, not everything ages well.
Yeah.
We're fucking evidence of this.
well, and obviously the not to get too political, but the cancel culture, such as it is, whatever that is somewhat evidence of that too, because people are now sort of getting down on things that were done 30, 40 years ago, which were funny then, or at least we thought they were, that don't necessarily translate well now.
Yeah.
Because mores change, times change. I can only imagine what people 50 years from now are going to be saying about the shit we do at this point. Of course, they say it now.
At our age, buddy,
Well, we
don't
care.
give a shit
Well, that's
what
true.
anybody's going to say in 50 years.
That's true. But yeah, the pop culture references, you got to be careful with those. Some of them are evergreen. I mean, I still see cartoons from the 30s and 40s that make
Sure.
references and we get them, but you got to be real sparing with it. You don't want everything.
And it's got to be something like that, like
Yeah.
Apocalypse Meow, like Star Wars. It's got to be something that has become such a part of our cultural consciousness.
Exactly.
Butcher does this in the Dresden Files. He talks about young Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
And he can get away with that because Star Wars is such a part of our
Yeah, exactly. It's such
mind,
it's
such our life.
such a cultural touchstone now.
But you couldn't really do that with even say Clone Wars
Yeah.
because it's not the original trilogy.
Yeah, not everybody's seen it.
Not everyone's seen it, and you
like-
certainly don't want to do it with, I don't know, pick something that's
Well, it's like the thing I just did the what's up,
Yeah.
Now, obviously, in the '80s, that was a thing. That was the whole Budweiser commercial. But half the people watching this probably had no idea what I was talking about.
right.
And
Unless they're pro wrestling fans and they remember the Dudley Boys.
well, that may be. But that's kind of one of those. So yeah, commercials, anything ephemeral like that, you
Yeah.
don't necessarily want to reference.
You know, I was watching a rerun of a TV show yesterday, and they talked about thinking that they were talking about the woman who did the "Where's the Beef" commercial.
Right. Yeah.
There are people in this room who were not alive when the "Where's the Beef" commercial
That's true.
aired.
Yep.
So that is one of those things. Comedy can be timeless. Noel Coward,
Noel Coward. Well, I mean,
Shakespeare.
Andy Griffith
Yeah.
show. They never, no, not a pop culture reference mentioned in that.
No.
Newhart, although funnily enough, we watched the Bob Newhart show recently, and they actually do a few pop culture references. I mean, they talked about The Exorcist, and they talked about things that. Now, it wasn't the whole show, obviously, and
Sure.
And again, TV's a little different because you do want to sort of be with the time you're showing,
Yeah.
because that's what attracts people a lot of times to it.
But with books, we're hoping that they're going to sit on shelves for years and years,
Exactly.
and people are going to pick them up and enjoy them.
That's what we hope. So yeah, so that's kind of the three things. Don't over-explain the joke. Don't go too heavy with the pop culture references, if at all, and don't have a joke at the sacrifice of character and plot.
And if you would like to pick up some of mine or Paul's books and take them home and decorate your bookshelves like I've done with these, you can go to the Falstaff Books website and do that. So we're going to go write more books, and you should go buy them. Bye.
Bye.
Back to three things. And in this time,
Take two.